Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Denver Broncos UK podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Fitchie, and this week I'm just joined by Stuart Brunt once again. Unfortunately, Dave's not fully recovered yet from COVID. We wish him all the best as he continues his recovery, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to get him back next week. Stuart, how are you doing?
Not too bad, but busy weekend work. But other than that, looking forward to Sunday.
Yeah, as you said there, football is finally back. The NFL season gets underway tonight. The Broncos get underway on Sunday. I mean, how good is it, first of all, just to have football back in our lives, real competitive football that actually matters?
Definitely looking forward to it. With the last few months and years we've had there with the COVID and everything there, it's just a little bit of recreational activity that we can all get behind and get excited for is definitely what we need at this time, definitely.
It'll be great to see a full MetLife Stadium Sunday, and in a couple of weeks, Mile High will be rocking with 76,000 packed in, which I'm sure will certainly notice a difference compared to last year there, won't we?
100% we will there. Home field advantage is massive, and I'm hoping that the fans can get behind us and we can turn ourselves into a little fortress and secure ourselves with a few more wins this year.
Yeah, well, hopefully the Broncos will be going home 2-0. We'll get onto our season preview just shortly, but we'll kick off this show with a chat that I had with Zach Stevens from DMVR to preview the upcoming season. So we'll take a listen to that now. So I'm delighted to welcome Zach Stevens from DMVR to this week's episode of the Broncos UK podcast. Zach, thanks for taking time to come on. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so happy that week one is here and that we're actually talking about game week.
Yeah, I know it's a long time coming with the NFL having only such a short season, but when it comes around, I think you appreciate it even more, don't you? So it's great that it's finally back. I mean, I think there's only one place to start with the Broncos going into the new season, and that's the quarterback position. Teddy Bridgewater will be starting week one. Do you think the Broncos have made the right decision there?
Yeah, I think so, especially when you look at this decision just being about this year, which with Vic Fangio being the head coach and him really fighting for just this year, this decision was always going to come down to who is the better quarterback for this year. And now a lot of people thought, okay, if it's close, the Broncos organization should roll with Drew Lock because he has potentially more upside, a brighter future with the team. He's younger. But I always viewed it as the opposite, that if this really was Vic Fangio making the decision, which George Paton said it was from the get-go, and then it really turned out to be Vic Fangio's call, well, he's going to go with the safe option if it's close. And that safe option is the veteran guy, is the guy who wasn't on his team last year, because the guy that was on his team last year just straight up led the league in interceptions. So to me, with how it played out, I think it was a very close battle. Vic was spot on by just saying every week it's even, Steven, it's close. But then in the end, the better quarterback was Teddy Bridgewater. Everyone saw it in that final preseason game, or I guess I should say that second preseason game, when Teddy really came on strong at the end. And then in practices, Teddy did have a slight edge after training camp was over.
Obviously, we've seen what's come out today regarding Drew Lock as we're recording this. Do you think that had any sort of impact heading into training camp that maybe put him slightly behind Teddy in Vic Fangio's eyes?
I think it had to. And because Vic was just irate over this last year. And of course, we didn't know what happened in terms of Drew and the other three quarterbacks last year trying to, quote, fool the system, as that report from the LA Times said. And Vic was very upset behind the scenes and publicly. He even threw the quarterbacks under the bus after that Saints game, as we all remember. So I think that's something that certainly played into the equation. Now, was it the forefront of Vic's mind when he decided to make Teddy Bridgewater the starting quarterback? No, I don't think so. But one of the things that the biggest reason why they went with Teddy over Drew, even though it was close, was Teddy has more experience. And I think the experience goes into leadership. And I think leadership, there was really no question in Vic's mind that Teddy just has more of that this year.
And obviously we've seen Broncos go with veterans in recent years at the quarterback position like Joe Flacco, Case Keenum. You've been at training camp. How has Teddy looked compared to those guys who've been there previously?
Well, I'll tell you what, Case Keenum lit it up in training camp. He's maybe the best quarterback that's been around here in training camp since Peyton Manning. And so Teddy hasn't been up to those standards, but then we see Case Keenum comes out week 1, throws 3 interceptions. So I've seen a steady veteran presence from Teddy Bridgewater, a guy that surprisingly during camp took more shots down the field than Drew Lock himself, the guy that was supposed to be the gunslinger. Teddy Bridgewater was connecting and also connecting with guys deeper. So I think people are going to be a little surprised at how it's not just truly check down Teddy. Now, are we going to see the plays where he's rolling right and then pitches it left like that play that Drew Lock made against Seattle? No, we're not going to see those type of highlight reels, but we are going to see Teddy push the ball downfield more than we thought we would when they originally signed him. So I think it's still going to be a very steady offense, but it is so clear this offense is going to run through the ground game.
Yeah, obviously there's plenty of weapons there for Teddy on offense with Javonte Williams, in addition to what was already there in previous years. How good does the offense need to be for the Broncos to be good?
I think it's a fantastic question, even though all the talk has been about the quarterbacks and we look at all the weapons that they have on offense, a first-round receiver, a Pro Bowl second-round receiver, another second-round receiver, a first-round tight end, a Pro Bowl first-round running back in Melvin Gordon, a second-round pick in Javonte Williams. So much talent. But for this year, this team's success still rides on the defensive side of the ball. So this defense has to be elite. And when I'm talking elite, the floor, the worst this defense should be is top 5. They really should be a top 3 defense and really fighting throughout the year back and forth with a couple of teams for the number 1 defense in the NFL. So then on offense, what you need is you really just need average play, especially from the quarterback position. If this quarterback, if Teddy Bridgewater can be average, then the Broncos are going to be a playoff team. They're going to be a double-digit win team because the ground game should be at least a top 10 rushing attack. I think they have the chance to be a really, really good one, but they should be at least top 10 if they're not putting the load entirely on their shoulders. And so that's all the offense needs to do is if the quarterback is average, they're going to be probably the 12th best offense in the NFL. And that is a big-time formula for success for Denver.
Yeah, and we know how deep the Broncos are on the defensive side of the ball with the talent they've got there. How does Vic get the best use out of those players, especially at the cornerback position where you've got Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan, Ronald Darby, Patrick Surtain? How does he get the best out of all that talent?
Well, to get the best out of all that talent, they've got to be on the field. And so you got to play dime. I think dime has to be your new base defense. That has to be the defense that you're in more often than any other defense. Now, I understand on 3rd and 2, you're not going to be in dime. You're going to want some more big guys on the field, and that's totally fine. But 2nd and 4, heck, I'm in dime then because you're four of your best defensive players, certainly 4 of your best 11 defensive players are those 4 cornerbacks that you just mentioned. They've got to be on the field. And here's a reason why they can do that is all of those guys are good tacklers, and especially Patrick Surtain. He's a guy that we've seen him in training camp line up in the dime, but he's kind of playing that inside linebacker position, and he's big enough to be good enough in the run game, and that is going to be a key. If the Broncos defense in dime can stop the run well enough, then they should live in dime. Where they're going to be forced to switch to nickel and even base is if that dime defense isn't able to stop the run.
Yeah, you mentioned Surtain, his size and finding positions to get him on the field. Could he be an answer to the Broncos tight end covering woes? I mean, every team struggles to cover Travis Kelce and Darren Waller, but that's kind of emphasized when you're playing them twice a year. Do you think he can kind of help out in that regard specifically?
Well, I think you hit it on the head, and it's helping out. It's every team has these issues, so it's slowing these guys down because these guys have feasted on the Broncos. You look at Darren Waller in his 4 games that he's played the Broncos when he's been with the Raiders, he averages over 80 yards per game. You look at Travis Kelce in the past 7 games he's played against the Broncos, he's averaged over 100 yards per game. That is mind blowing. So do you expect to put Patrick Surtain on him and hold him to 1 catch for 5 yards? No, of course not. But do I think Patrick Surtain can limit him? I absolutely think he can. And is it a massive task to ask from a rookie? Yeah, it is. But look, this is a guy that's coming out from the University of Alabama. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's 6'2" to over 200 pounds. He's about as big of a cornerback as you get with all of the athleticism. This, if there's anyone that's just built for this, it's Patrick Surtain. Now, will he be better doing this next year? Of course he will be. He'll have another year under his belt, but I don't think there's anyone else on the Broncos that profiles better than him. So if I'm Vic, even though he's a rookie, I'm saying you're a top 10 pick. Talent is oozing out. Maybe you give up a big play to one of these guys, but in the end, you're going to slow these guys down more than we've been able to in the past.
And then also, obviously, getting Von Miller back is massive for this defense, but I think we've probably got to touch on his pass rush partner based on what's just come out today as well as we're recording this. Bradley Chubb detained for failing to appear at court. What impact will that have on his season, do you think? Will he be ready to go week 1? Will he miss time later on? What are you expecting there?
Yeah, I don't expect this to have much impact on the season at all. It's really more just so a stupid look for Bradley Chubb. You know, it's a silly young 22-year-old mistake just to rack up driving tickets and then, you know, including an expired license, and then not show up for court, have the arrest warrant put out for you, and then he's detained. I expect him to be back at Broncos practice tomorrow. Today's their off day, so it didn't really matter anyways. But I don't expect this to have him miss anything. But I am worried about Bradley for a different reason. For his ankle, the ankle that he didn't have surgery on this year. He twisted about 10 days ago, played through the final preseason game with it, but then sat out all of last week because it was still sore. He was at practice yesterday, but in a limited capacity. I'm really worried about Bradley because not just about if he's going to be able to play this week. There's still some questions about that. But if they play him this week, I mean, you got to knock on wood. Or as I understand you guys say out there, you got to touch wood. You've got to make sure he doesn't get injured, because if there's any sign or risk of him getting injured further on this ankle, you've got to just step back and say, I'd rather have Bradley Chubb for the last 15 games of the season than have him for 1 quarter this game and then have him out for 5 or 6 weeks after that. So I'm concerned about Bradley Chubb's health, not this legal stuff that just popped up.
I mean, obviously, Von Miller is back. He's obviously been a big missing last season. You know, it'd be a big miss for any team. From what you've seen, what Von Miller do you think we'll be getting this season?
Yeah, he looks great. He looks great, but Von Miller always looks great. You know, Von Miller was tearing up training camp 2 years ago, and then he went out and had an 8-sack season. And I understand sacks aren't everything, but sacks are the game-changing plays. And you don't pay a guy $19-20 million to just be great against the run and create a lot of pressure. You pay him for the game-changing plays, and so that's what the Broncos need from him. They need, close to 30 sacks combined from Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. That's what 2 top 5 picks at pass rusher. That's what the production should be. So I'm expecting big things from from Von Miller, close to a 15-sack season. And he is the key for the Broncos defense to be that elite group that I talked about. The Broncos can be elite without Von Miller being elite, but there's a lot of hurdles they have to jump over. If Von Miller's elite, not only does that help, the sack total, but it makes your 4 cornerbacks and 2 safeties just look like all pros, even if they're not playing to an all pro level. And then if they are, it just elevates them to be so good. So I expect a big season from Von because he's on a contract year and he wants to play another 5 to 7 years after this year. Now, that may be pretty ambitious, but that just shows you that he still wants another big contract next year, and no better way for him to prove that he's back after that 8-sack season in 2019 and after the season-ending injury last year than with a monster year this year.
And then looking at week 1, Sunday night, the Broncos travel to New York to face the Giants. I mean, it seems ridiculous to say it in week 1, but if the Broncos want to be a playoff team, it seems to be pretty much a must-win game. I mean, what are your expectations going into this game?
Yeah, isn't it crazy to say that? You know, you never want to overreact to one game, but you're right. I mean, it's as close to a must-win as you can get coming into week 1, and I think the Broncos are going to be ready for it. I know they started slow in week 3 of the preseason, but they started very fast in week 1 and week 2. That's the urgency that I expect the Broncos to come out with, and yet you have to beat this team. Look, Saquon is likely going to play, but going to be limited. He's their best player by far, and he's going to be limited. Daniel Jones is a turnover machine. The Broncos should be able to feast on that. The key here is just going to be containing him in terms of his scrambling ability, because if he's able to scramble, that's going to throw the Broncos secondary way off, and that's something the Broncos can't afford, is to have guys, getting 5 seconds for him to throw the ball. So that's going to be a key, is just containing him. And then their defense is actually pretty good. I think it's going to surprise some people this year with just how they're able to limit other teams, the Giants I'm talking about, but the Broncos, I mean, got to be able to put up 20 points against this team. So I'm not expecting an exciting game by any means, but I think the final score is going to favor the Broncos.
Yeah, and obviously the Broncos haven't been great in September since Vic Fangio came in. Sure. Is there anything to read into with that, or do you think it's the fact the Broncos haven't played the Giants, Jaguars, and Jets early on?
I think there's definitely something to both of those things. The slow start is something that Vic has kind of quietly adjusted to. In the past 2 years, he hasn't been shy with running his guys for 2 hours and 45 minutes, the max length of practice. Now this year, you've seen him kind of dial it back. And in my mind, I think that's him saying, we need to do something different. And something else that he's doing different is he hasn't had season-long captains until this year. Now he has season-long captains. And I think that's to kind of say, like, okay, guys, you need to get this team up, because we can't wait until October to get ready to play, because the easiest part of our schedule is these 3 games. And like you said, how this week kind of feels like a must win. You have to be 2-1 at the end of September. Probably you'd like to be 3-0 so that you can drop a couple of those next challenging games, but you have to be 2-1. So a quick start is an absolute must, not just for the team this year, but for Vic Fangio's job, for Teddy Bridgewater to hold on to the job past the middle of October.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to talk about it because I hope it doesn't happen. But if the Broncos do somehow get off to an 0-3 start or something like that, how long will Vic Fangio and Teddy Bridgewater be about? What would their leash be, do you think?
Yeah, I think after that, if there's an 0-3 start, and especially if it's with Teddy and the offense struggling, I think that's when we start talking about the quarterback change potentially, especially in a last-ditch effort for Vic to save his job. I don't think Vic Fangio would be fired after an 0-3 start. But I do think if the struggles really continue through that Cleveland game, which is a Thursday night game, that's when I think we could see a change made after then. I think Broncos looking at like 1-6 or something, 2-7 around that point. That's when a change is made. I think George Paton really doesn't want to have to do any midseason firing this year. He really wants to just see it all play out, see what needs to change after the season. But if you get to that point, at some point, George has to say, this is hurting my reputation. This is hurting this team in the future. I've got to make a change. So if it's really bad after that Cleveland game, then I would expect a change to be made.
Right. Well, let's hope none of that happens. At the Broncos are 3-0 after week 3, and everything is going swimmingly, and Teddy Bridgewater is going to be around for all 17 games. But what do you think is the ceiling and floor for this team this season? Pretending there's not a ridiculous amount of injuries, of course, because that would tank any team's floor.
Right. And that's exactly why I say the floor isn't any lower than what it was last year. And with this extra game, I'll give the Broncos a win there. So I'll say this team is, what would that be, 6-11 as their floor. You can't say that it's impossible for the Broncos to have another bad season. They've just had 5 of them in a row. So I have to go 6-11, but it's not going to be worse than last year. And then their ceiling, man, if Teddy Bridgewater plays anywhere close to the way he did that 5-game stretch with New Orleans, where he threw 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and the team went 5-0. If he and that was the best he's ever played. If he's able to do that, this team can win 12 games. And it's crazy to say, but the talent is all around. You know what? This team can win 13 games. They can be a 13-4 team if Teddy plays that well. Realistically, he's played that well for a 5-game stretch. So I think this team could easily be a double-digit win team if Teddy Bridgewater just plays good. If he's an average quarterback, then this team will be a double-digit win team.
If you had to state your claim right now, would you say the Broncos are going to be a playoff team or are not going to be a playoff team?
Oh, it's a great question. Right now, I would say they're just going to miss out. I think they're going to be a winning team, though, and that's something that they haven't seen since 2016. I think they go 9-8, and they really are in it with 2 weeks left in the season. But if they're in it that last week, you hope the Chiefs actually have the number 1 seed locked up so that it's an easy game going into the playoffs. But I think they're going to be 9-10 win team right now.
So right on the cusp of that playoff. I mean, It'd make a change to have games mattering in week 17 and 18 now.
It would be great. It would be such a nice change.
But yeah, I think that just about does for us. Do you want to? I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone who listens to this podcast will be listening to DNVR already and reading your stuff. But just in case they're not, do you want to give it a plug and where people can read, subscribe, listen to all your work?
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. We're over at thednvr.com. I'm at Zach Stevens DNVR on Twitter. And man, I really, really enjoy this podcast, and it's an honor to jump on with you.
So thanks to Zach for coming on the show this week. It's a great chat as always with him. Stuart, the Broncos are coming into the new season with Teddy Bridgewater as a starting quarterback. He's got the weapons around him in Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton's back, Albert O, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, Tim Patrick. There's lots of talent on that offensive side of the ball. What are your expectations for this offense going into the season?
Expectation-wise, I'm just looking at we've had so many disappointments, we've had so many injuries, we've had so many bad decision-making, play calling from both coaches and quarterbacks. I just think if we can get some sort of consistency, I think consistency is going to be the biggest key for us offensively this year. Like you just mentioned there, we've reeled off all the weapons. Von Miller's been bragging about how good this offensive line is that he's been practicing against leading up to the season starting, which is extremely good news. We've solidified the right-hand side. If the offensive line can make very much the holes it's been making for the last few years in the run game, as well as pass protect, Teddy Bridgewater can then hopefully control the ball, control the clock, keep dinking and dunking if he needs to, just to keep the plays coming. Hopefully take the shots. We've got the weapons like you've mentioned, and I just think consistency is going to be the biggest key. And obviously, as I always say, time. If we control the ball for a lot longer than the opposition, this defense is going to eat all day and hopefully take its preseason form into the regular season.
And you mentioned the running game there. What are you expecting from that this year? Obviously, Melvin Gordon is slated to start off as the number 1 guy, but Javonte Williams has come in. We traded up to get him in the second round. You know, Teddy's compared him to Alvin Kamara.
I was looking with a friend at work who's a 49ers fan. I was looking at some bits and pieces on the internet there, and I was looking at it from a neutral sort of perspective at this Broncos offense. If we can get 1,500 to 1,600 yards out of the running game, and then 1,000 yards to the 3 big wide receivers and Noah Fant, and then roughly 1,100 yards off the bit players, we could easily get 13 wins. That's not an over exaggeration. That's just basic numbers that I was looking at with somebody else. If we can get that sort of production out of the running game there, where it doesn't matter who it is, it's not going to be a if they both get 1,000 yards or anything like that. There, if they both do about 800 yards, like you say, the Williams has been compared to Alvin Kamara. If we can get the ball to him in space in the passing game, and he can just light up a few players, get a few yards here, there, and everywhere, just to keep it. I think it's all going to be about keeping the ball, limiting how many turnovers we have, how much possession we have. I think 1,600 yards out the running game, and then 4.5 to 5,000 out the passing game. Limit the turnovers to single figures over the course of the season. And I think that is, with the weapons that we have, the offensive line, we have the coaches, we have the way that they've played in the preseason, the way they've trained, the way they've gone on about the business. I think that is the expectation that a lot of fans are going to have this year. And I think it's definitely going to lead to double-digit victories like we spoke about last week.
Yeah, well, if Teddy's throwing for 4,500 to 5,000 yards, I think he'll have exceeded a lot of people's expectations there, won't he? And the Broncos will definitely be going places.
It's he's easily capable of 300-yard games. When you look at it now, you're looking at 17 games, 300 yards a game, 5,100 yards. Dead easy maths. It's not to get a quarterback with 300 yards is not a massive thing anymore. The quarterback that get all the high praise are the 400, 450 quarterbacks. I think Manning's yardage record might go this year with the extra game, with the way that the quarterbacks are throwing the balls around. But I think if we get roughly 250 to 300 yards a game out of Teddy, and going on for roughly 80 to 100 yards a game on the running attack, the defense, like I said before, is going to be able to keep us in a lot of games. As soon as we score 24 points, I think that's it. You can call the game dead, because I don't think anybody is going to score more than 24 on us this year.
Yeah, and I mean, that's where the Broncos have struggled, isn't it? The offense in recent years has not allowed the defense to, last year in particular, not allowed the defense to keep teams below 24. But as you mentioned earlier, control the clock. You allow the defense to get rest, keep the opposition to less than 24, and this offense should be good enough to score around that most weeks, and that's a recipe for success.
We've had many games where we've been in complete control. The Patriots, for example, last year, in complete control of the game, doing everything we wanted, controlling the ball, no turnovers, no nothing. Just couldn't score enough points, and then nearly got pipped at the end when the Patriots scored a couple of touchdowns and nearly got back into us. It's that sort of thing we need to eliminate, because it's all good and well driving, but if we could have the ball for 55 minutes of the game, and in that 55 minutes we might score four field goals, whereas in the other 5 minutes the other team scores 2 touchdowns and we've lost. It's about consistency for me. It's about keeping the right players on the right path there, no injuries. Like we've discussed before previously in the previous years we've done the podcast there, controlling the clock, controlling the trenches. The trenches for me is a massive, massive thing. Von Miller obviously giving the big heads up and big thumbs up for the offensive line this morning, I think it was, or last night in America, giving a massive, massive thumbs up to the offensive line. It just shows that we've gone the right way with the draft picks, with the free agency picks we've had, with the consistency with the coaches. We just need a quarterback now that's going to come in and hopefully steer the bus in the right direction, which we haven't had the previous few years. We've had a lot of inconsistencies that have caused us to go on runs of 2 and 3 losses in a row, or 2 and 3 really poor offensive performances, which, like you rightly said, again, the defense hasn't got a chance when you don't put points up on the other side against them.
And which of these offensive weapons are you most excited to see? Who do you think can really break out this year and become a star on this Broncos team? Obviously, Cortland Sutton is already there, I would suggest, before his injury.
With Cortland Sutton coming back and arguably taking the number 1 wide receiver slot away from Jerry Jeudy this year, Judy's going to eat absolute feast, being the number 2. He'll go up against a lot of zone coverages where the safety in the corner will try and zone him, because Sutton will be having the best corner against him. So the way he runs routes, the way that he has got fantastic footwork, the way that he'll be able to quickly shift from 0 to 60 in half a second, he'll be able to be open when other guys wouldn't be. I'm really looking forward to how he attacks this offence. Definitely, we're going to be looking at the way that Teddy plays as 5-6 yard passes, and then, like Dave mentioned a couple of weeks ago, we're going to rely heavily on the yards after the catch with the way that we are going to be setting ourselves up. So someone like Jerry Jeudy is going to be a massive star in this league. He could easily get 1,500 yards this year, easily.
Yeah, and I think that's what the Broncos need. If they can get, Cortland Sutton's being 1,000-yard receiver, if, going back to when we had Demarius and Emmanuel, if you can get Jerry Jeudy to match up there with Cortland, forgetting what Noah Fant can do, you're already in a good place there, aren't you? And then, especially if you're going to be a run-first offense almost, Melvin Gordon, I'm really excited to see what he can do this year. But if you can get those 2, elite receivers having big years, it really does set you up, doesn't it?
100%. You're carrying on from last week with the good points you're making there, especially the comparison with DT and Emmanuel Sanders. Even before that, Eric Decker, Julius Thomas, 2013, the way that Wes Welker would take a lot of the midfield, mid out, and Julius Thomas would go over the top. If we get that sort of production, or a Wes Welker styled production from Jerry Jeudy, with a little bit of explosiveness from Hamler, Sutton, and obviously Tim Patrick on the sideline as well, it was going to open out massive open spaces for Albert O and Noah Fant. Now, if we can keep everybody happy, we could easily see a 2013 styled offense. Maybe not the numbers, maybe not the amount of touchdowns, etc., because we hopefully will run a lot more. Very excited for Melvin Gordon. The guy's a freight train. He showed against the Jets last year, when he gets his opportunity, when he gets plenty of carries because we have a lead, he can just pull people away, pull people apart. His hands are absolutely fantastic. I think his hands are a reason why we let Lindsay go. He surprised me with how good he was out the backfield catching the ball. It means that he is triple threat because he can stay in and pass protect because he's fantastic at that. You can give him a slide little handoff and he'll take defenders with him. He'll do whatever it is necessary that you need him to do. And if you're in third down, he can just nip out, catch a ball, and he's off. You're going to struggle to stop him once he gets ahead of the steam. We've got Williams in the same sort of mould. He's maybe a touch faster than Melvin Gordon has ever been in his life, which only bodes well for Denver. Just once he gets his pass protection up and about, he's going to be an absolute massive weapon for this offense. You're going to put if you put Gordon and Williams in the backfield, who are you going to look after? Who do you think is going to be the pass? Who do you think is going to be the catcher? It's going to cause a lot of dilemmas, which is only a good thing for Denver.
Yeah, and let's talk some defense now as well, which I know you enjoy. I mean, this defense on paper, with Von Miller healthy, I think Bradley Chubb's going to be limited in practice today, which is an improvement from his DNP yesterday. So he's trending in the right direction. Get those 2 together. We know what the defensive backfield looks like. This team should be a top 5 defense and could be the number 1, couldn't it, with what Vic Fangio has got to work with.
This defense has all the makings of Vic Fangio's Bears that you had, that was so superb 2019, I think it was 2018-2019 season. Definitely the Broncos 2015 season. If you look at man for man, arguably it lines up perfectly. We've got the same style of player in each position. Hopefully, we've only seen there was a stat on Twitter that I saw yesterday there that Bradley Chubb and Von Miller have only been on the field for 4 games since Fangio took over. We need that to be 16, 17, hopefully 18 if Bradley Chubb can get away with a sniggle. We've got Jonathan Cooper to come in to keep it fresh, where we had in 2015 Shaq Barrett was coming in, subbing in for DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller. So we've got a good third pass rusher that it's that sort of thing you have there to keep people fresh. If you've got Von Miller sat on the sidelines for 8 minutes of a massive drive and you score a touchdown, Von Miller on second down and long, then knowing it's going to be a pass is going to be an absolute machine. If you double him, how are you going to double Bradley Chubb as well? Because then you got a 2-on-1 straight up the middle. It's things like that. They're the situations that the Broncos need. You need 5 wide receivers and five offensive linemen against your 5 defensive linemen, because your 5 defensive linemen are going to win every single time, because there's no way 1-on-1 that everybody gets stopped. Not a chance. I'm not having it at all this year. And then that just means then that you need the corners to be super tight, super man to man, which we have. We've upgraded corner this year. I think on the man on man, I think better than 2015, if I'm honest. And that's saying a lot. We definitely have a superb rookie that could be Champ Bailey in 2 years' time. We've got Kyle Fuller, who arguably could be better than Aqib Talib of his day. Obviously, we've got a couple of issues with who's going to partner Justin Simmons at safety. It should be Kareem Jackson, but there's talk not so long ago of him maybe being traded out with the impressive performances from the rookie safeties that we got in the draft. But again, it's just all strength and depth there. Hopefully, we can keep the tight ends quiet like we had with TJ Ward. And Fangio can just let them go and hunt. But it all, as good as the defense as you have, if you're not scoring any points on the other side and you're not giving anything for this defense to protect, it's going to be incredibly difficult to win games.
And it's about generating turnovers for this defense as well, isn't it? Something that they've not always done under Vic Fangio. Even when they've played well, turnovers haven't always been up there with the best in the league. But they seem to now have the perfect storm with the weapons at cornerback. We've seen Justin Simmons 4 or 5 picks in the last couple of years each year. And when you get the pass rush, they should have enough time to get to the quarterback, cause fumbles, and they should be getting to the quarterback to force him to make the errant throws now, shouldn't he? And the secondary can eat.
Well, if you get the pass rush and you can disturb the pocket every single play, and you can stop the run, so it puts them in long situations there. You've got Ronald Darby, Kyle Fuller, 2 safeties. You've got PS2 on the other side. It's going to be incredible. Pick your poison. Who you're going to risk throwing to, which is where a lot of teams have always done us with the tight end. Always seems to squirt out. Always seems to get just enough. It's frustrating to watch when you see a really good, well put together defense staying on the field on a 3rd and 8 when the tight end has squeaked out and just got 8.5, 9 yards. We need to stop that, but that's where the pass rush comes in. The question last week about Denver's pass rush and run defense, it's going to be very, very key. That is going to be an ultimate thing to look for against the Giants, especially with Saquon Barkley, not 100%. If we can slow him right down into nothingness, run him into the dirt so they have to not risk him any further, it sort of forces the Giants into a one-dimensional offensive unit, which will only benefit Denver. Like I say there, that when they do anything like 5-on-5, I can't see Denver losing. I can't see us losing all 5 1-on-1s every single down. The pocket's going to collapse, hopefully. Force the quarterback into situations he doesn't want to be in, uncomfortable pockets, and the turnovers will come. I'd much rather Denver has the best 3rd down conversion defensively than lead the league in turnovers. It shows that you're stopping teams. That's all that matters. If the offense is getting the job done on the other side, a 3rd down conversion that is number 1 in the league, you should still be right up there, 10, 11, 12, 13 wins at the end of the season. It's turnovers is what's missing. definitely from this unit that we have. But I think it's all about third downs. If we can make teams punt a lot more than we're punting, I think we can class that as a victory.
Yeah, and I think the player everyone's most excited to see on defence is Patrick Surtain. From what we've seen in pre-season, what we've heard about in training camp, he's already got Kyle Fuller, Bryce Callahan, and Ronald Darby there with him. He's going to be a weapon that Vic Fangio is going to be able to use in a number of different ways, isn't he? He's not going to doesn't have to be outside covering the team's number 1 or 2. He can be rushing the passer, covering the tight end. He's going to be a dynamic weapon for this season at least, isn't he? Before he maybe settles down into a more usual role as some of the other guys move on.
He's played when I was looking at some of the film from his college days. He's played safety. He's played like a bit of a hybrid linebacker type in the middle of positions. He can rush the pass. He's fast enough to get there as well. He's strong enough and big enough to bring a quarterback down. I think you'll see a lot of PS2 on tight ends. We've got obviously Waller and Kelsey in our league, in our division. So I think you're going to see a lot of Kelsey and PS2 squaring up together and having the faster guys on the outside looking after Hardman and Hill. So I think they're going to be interesting battles to see. We had, like I say, in 2015, we had TJ Ward that was nullifying tight ends left, right, and centre, keeping everybody in check. I think we need somebody like that again. From the footage that I've been seeing on Twitter, PS2 looks like just the corner to start. If he comes in and plays that hybrid position for us, keeps tight ends quiet all year, he can easily slide out to outside corner, as we've seen against the Vikings, where he was targeted 9 times and he only gave up 1 catch and got a pick 6. He's a very, very accomplished person. From what we hear, Vic Fangio's been loving him for years. He just fits. He's just a perfect fit for how we want to play. I'm really, really, really excited to see how he shows up against the Giants.
Right, let's do some predictions then for this season. Stuart, give us a record prediction and where you think that will lead the Broncos. If you think they'll get to the playoffs, if you do, how far into the playoffs?
I honestly think now 12-5, and I can see that being a tie with the Chiefs, possibly going in as a wild card. I think Denver in our division. I think we're not a 5-1, 6-0 style team. There's always somebody that does us. There's always somebody that upsets us when you don't need it. It's always the Raiders that seem to put a spanner in our works. So I think the Chiefs will go ahead and win the division on AFC West matches. We'll get the playoffs. I see us winning the playoff game. I think Super Bowl might be slightly too much to ask for. But I'm excited to see playoff football in Denver, definitely.
I'm gonna go for some more cautious optimism. I think I'm settling in at 10-7, which is a wild card spot. I'm not sure we'll progress past the first round of the playoffs because we'll probably be playing someone like the Chiefs. If we're at the bottom end of the wild card. But I think that playoff football will be returning to Broncos country this year. So it'd be just nice for us all to have something to do in January other than sit there and hope the Chiefs lose. We can actually sit there and watch the Broncos. That'll be what everyone wants. And the path to the playoffs gets underway on Sunday when the Broncos take on the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium. To kick off our preview of that game, I spoke with Shane from the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. So we'll take a listen to that conversation now. So I'm delighted to welcome Shane from the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast to the show. Shane, thanks for taking time to come on. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me first of all. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Happy that the season's just around the corner at last. I suppose the place to start is, tell us a bit about how you became a Giants fan.
Yeah, so it's a bit long-winded process in a way. I originally started following the NFL and just like randomly picked a team, and I went with the Panthers. But I didn't really have anything for the Panthers. Like I had no affiliation to America. Like some people have been to America and that and got family, etc. There's no affiliation for me whatsoever. So anyway, long story short, I realised that Panthers I had no interest in. No offence if any Panthers fans are listening.
Not sure why they would be, but
you never know. But yeah, I just had no affiliation to it or anything. And then I started to look into it all a little bit more and sort of decided to do what a lot of people said in let the team pick you as opposed to you picking a team. So I just started to feel this pull towards the Giants. New York's a place I want to go to. They're playing blue and white. They won the Super Bowl the year I was born. I'm a Penn State fan and I drafted Saquon Barkley the year I decided to become a fan, and it all just sort of seemed to just click perfectly, to be honest. And it's just been losing seasons ever since then.
Drawn in by the misery.
Yeah, exactly.
So I suppose, talk about the Giants. We'll start with one of those losing seasons, which was last year. You guys finished 6-10. Is that kind of what you expected going into the year, or was that a disappointment?
It was disappointing to miss the playoffs, considering let's be honest, how poor the NFC East is. 6-10, and we were in contention to make the playoffs. It's probably going to be the only season that happens for a while. But the signs were encouraging. Brought Joe Judge in from New England, and he's just brought in this philosophy that everyone seems to be buying into, the owners, the players, the fans. And I just think that, as fans, we're able to see some progress. Yeah, there is question marks over certain parts of the team, not most notably the biggest one being quarterback. There was a regression from the quarterback last year, but just from the way our defense played last year was absolutely amazing. Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, it's only going to be a matter of time until he gets an head coaching position, in all honesty. But yeah, there was encouraging signs, and it sort of gave Giants fans a bit of hope going into the future that, maybe we're getting round to turning that corner that, probably took a lot longer than anticipated when Dave Gettleman come in as GM in 2018.
So you're pretty happy with the kind of direction that Joe Judge has taken you on since he came in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the free agents that we've brought in, we brought Logan Ryan in last year, and he sort of went on a recruiting spree this year. He'd come off holiday from Florida when we brought in Adoree Jackson. He played with Adoree Jackson in Tennessee. So, it just seems the players have brought into it, and there's positive signs. Yeah, there's still question marks at the minute. And the season's going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to be straightforward. Like any sports, it seems to be up and down all the time and full of events and misery at times. But yeah, look, going forward, I think that the progress is there to be made, and we've definitely got the right head coach at least.
So talk us through your off season then. What guys have come in free agency in the draft, and what sort of impact do you think they'll have? Yeah,
so free agency wise, the big one we lost was Dalvin Tomlinson. He went off to Minnesota. Quite disappointing to see him go, but it was expected with money, etc. And obviously we were able to sign Leo Williams down to a long-term deal. Then we brought in Kenny Golladay. We needed that big receiver, that tall receiver in the red zone, in the end zone. So we brought in Kenny Golladay. Adoree Jackson as that cornerback too. Adoree Jackson, former first-round pick. If he's fit, him and James Bradbury can lock down wide receivers, in my opinion. Bradbury had a great year last year, and if Adoree Jackson can hit that potential that he showed at college and was anticipated on him coming into the league, staying healthy, he's got a little bit of an ankle injury at the minute, that'll be massive. Then obviously in the draft, I think everyone knows we were going to go for either Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith. Waddle went off the board. Smith started to fall to us, and then the Eagles did an inter-divisional trade, which is sometimes unheard of, with the Cowboys to get in front of us and took Devontae Smith. We've then traded back and took Kadarius Toney and got an extra first next year off the Bears. No problems with the trading back. Kadarius Toney's been a little bit of a letdown so far, in all honesty. Trying not to get on the kids back too early in his career, but there was issues like turning up at training camp and not having the right size cleats. He's had COVID. He's been dealing with a niggling injury, and it's just all the things that you don't want to see from your first round pick. But we did get a bit of a steal in the draft, in my opinion, in Azeez Ojulari, we took in the second round. He was widely anticipated to go in the first. And then probably the biggest rookie that's made the biggest difference is Rodarius Williams, who's Greedy Williams' older brother, believe it or not. I think he was at Oklahoma for 4 or 5 years, like 25 years old, I think. So he's quite old in terms of an NFL player getting drafted, but he's probably been the biggest standout from the rookies. But at the same time, he's probably got on the field the most out of all the rookies, because I think we've got 2 on IR at the minute or pup. Tony's not really played. So, yeah, name the moves we made in free agency and the draft.
So what is that depth chart looking like in terms of the rookies then? I take it we're not expecting to see too much of Tony in week 1. Are we going to see much of the other rookies?
In all honesty, with Tony, it's like a big question mark at the minute. No one really knows. 2 weeks ago, the organisation came out and said he's dealing with an injury. That was all. Nobody knew what the injury was, what the severity of it was, or anything. I believe it's turned out to be a hamstring injury now, but there's still no confirmation if he's going to be ready to go week 1 or not. But obviously, he's taken no snaps in pre-season, so I think if he does take any snaps, I think it'll kind of be maybe if we're trying to get a little bit creative, end around, kind of gadget plays, get him involved and that. I imagine Azeez Ojulari will get on the field, and Rodarius Williams and Robinson's on pup until week 6. Gary Brightwell's going to be our RB3. Yeah, and I think that's all the rookies I can remember.
Yeah, so you've brought in Kenny Golladay, drafted a first-round receiver, so you've tried to put those weapons around Daniel Jones, who's going into his 3rd year now. What is kind of the consensus on him amongst Giants fans?
It's a make or break year. He's got to perform this year. It's simple. He looked really good as a rookie, and I'm not just saying this as a Giants fan. Like, I genuinely thought, his rookie season, he looked really good, really promising. Yeah, he had fumbles. Cut them fumbles out, and he looked like a really solid starter. And then last year he just took a step back. I mean, there's been things about the O-line and the protection, but there's some ownership on Daniel Jones as well. He doesn't seem to feel that pressure a great deal, which could be a little bit of a problem this coming weekend. But when these DNs and linebackers are blitzing, he just doesn't seem to feel the pressure much. When he's got the clean pocket and he's got a time to read the field and pick his receiver out, he can throw a good ball. But everyone will tell you it's a make or break here. If we end up with a losing record and he throws something like 25 touchdowns to 14, 16 picks and has 6-8 fumbles, I just don't see how he can stay the guy, in all honesty, and especially having 2 first-round picks next year in the draft. We're going to have that ammunition to move up if we need to replace him.
Were you happy with them, deciding to roll with him again this year as a make or break year, or do you have liked to have seen them do something already?
I think going into the draft, I was happy with him. A week from the season, maybe it's a different answer. Because you look at Mac Jones and Justin Fields, that they look pretty good. They're flashing a little bit of potential in pre-season. It'll take time till they get into the league to see what they've actually got. But yeah, I don't think you could have replaced him prior to the draft, having what you surrounded him with, etc. He didn't look overly brilliant in pre-season when he did play through a bit of a dodgy interception in the end zone against New England. But hopefully it's just going to blow the cobwebs out more than anything else. He hasn't really played much. And like I say, if that O-line can protect him, give him the time in the pocket that he needs, hopefully he can prove why he can be the guy and not just a guy.
So obviously, this season will probably, it's going to depend a lot on Daniel Jones. Like for the Broncos, it'll depend on how Teddy performs. What are the expectations for the Giants going into this season?
I think it depends who you ask. I mean, a lot of fans have spoke about playoff football. For me, it's just be competitive. If we miss out on the playoffs, but we, going into week 17, week 18 as it is now, we say we need a win to get in, but we don't get it. We miss out. Okay, that's absolutely fine. But we just want to see progression from Daniel Jones. Obviously, Saquon Barkley's had a few niggling injuries, went out in week 2 last season, so he's coming back. So we want to see him sort of, looking like the guy that we drafted in his rookie year when he had over 2,000 scrimmage yards. Progress from Daniel Jones, progress from the O-line and from the wide receivers. We already know we've got a good defense, so that there's no there's no concerns in regards to what the defense is going to offer. I think the defense is going to maybe have to win us quite a lot of games this coming year, in all honesty. But we need to know that if there's a 2-minute drill, 2-minute drive down the field to get the game settled and get a win, we need to be able to know we can rely on Daniel Jones to get that job done.
And how do you see the NFC East shaping up? Obviously, last year it wasn't the highest standards in the NFL, but I mean, realistically, where can the Giants finish in there this year?
In all honesty, anywhere between first and third. I think that can win the division, but I think the Cowboys have got a good roster. They've got Dak, Zeke, they've got some great wide receivers there. The defense is pretty good. Obviously, they're drafting Micah Parsons, Leighton Van Der Esch is there, Smith's there. I think the Redskins, the Washington football team, their defense speaks for itself. They've got a stud defense. The only thing that I think will hold them back is going to be the quarterback in Fitzpatrick. See what kind of quarterback he turns out to be. When he's there, he's not really got much competition. The only team I think that's not going to be in the conversation is going to be the Eagles, in all honesty. I'm just not convinced by what they've got roster-wise, what they're building there. But, I think if we won it, wouldn't surprise me. If we finish third, it wouldn't surprise me. Just as, like I say, as long as we're competitive and we're not missing out by 6 games, for instance.
Yeah, and then obviously week 1, you're hosting the Broncos to get the season started. I mean, how do you look at that game with the Broncos coming to town? How do you kind of view the Broncos?
I looked at it a bit differently once they announced Teddy was the starting quarterback. I think I've probably been a little bit more hopeful if it had been Drew Lock, in all honesty. I do like Drew Lock. I'd have been a lot more confident in what we could do. I think Teddy's quite an underrated quarterback, in all honesty. But like I alluded to a little while ago, you've got great pass rushers, Chubb, Von Miller. I like some of the players that you've drafted, and then offensively, you've got Cortland Sutton coming back from his injury, Jerry Jeudy. I like the running backs you've got. I was massive on Javonte Williams in this draft. I knew the Giants weren't going to take him, but he was one of them running backs who I was like, I had him as my RB2 over Travis Etienne, in all honesty. So I think, there's going to be it's going to be a big test for the Giants O-line against your defense, but also it's going to be a test for our defense covering the wide receivers and the weapons that the Broncos have got.
And what is the Giants' route to winning that game? I assume if the Giants are going to win, it's probably going to be a low-scoring one from what you've said so far, and it'll probably be a low-scoring one whoever wins, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I reckon Saquon Barkley's going to be taking some reps, but I don't know if it's going to sort of be a 60%, 80%, maybe even less than 50%. But yeah, like I said, I think the key is going to be our defense to winning that game, personally. And like I said, hopefully Daniel Jones can hit the weapons that he's got. Sterling Shepard's looked great for us in this off-season. He's had a great training camp, looked good in pre-season, so we'll be relying on him quite a lot. They've already said Evan Ingram's not going to be, or that it's very unlikely Evan Ingram's going to be taken to the field. So that's one less weapon for Daniel to aim for. But obviously, we also brought in Cole Rudolph during free agency. So hopefully he's ready to go. But he has also been dealing with an injury. So there's a lot of question marks. Kenny Golladay's got an injury. I've not seen if he's going to be 100% to go or not. I think it's the injuries that we've had recently. It's been one of them that if there was a Super Bowl tomorrow, for instance, or a big game tomorrow, yeah, they'd probably all play. But I just wonder personally if they're going to maybe ease some of them in. Obviously, Kenny's not taking any snaps during pre-season either because of the injury. So, I think it'll be a low-scoring game personally. So now you can probably bet on like a 36-33 game or something ridiculous.
Well, I'm going to ask you to make a prediction. So what are you going to put your money on?
See, it depends who you get on this podcast, because I'm very much not half empty, but I set my expectations low. So if they don't happen, I'm not as disappointed. Whereas if I was like, yeah, we're going to win and we lose, I'll get all annoyed and fed up and that. I think the Broncos are probably going to edge it, in all honesty. Like I said, if Drew Lock had been starting, I think I'd have gone with the Giants to win. But with Teddy there, I think it's like I said, it's going to be a close game. I think I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 3 points the difference either way, in all fairness. But I'd probably go 13-10 Broncos.
Well, I'll take that. It'll be an improvement on our last few starts. I think we're 0-7 in September since Vic came in, so it'd be nice to get off to a good start for once.
Yeah, I'll get slaughtered by the rest of the lads for saying that, I'll tell you.
Well, when you're right, you can come back to that one anyway.
I'm wrong. Like I say, I'd have no issues if they got the W and prove me wrong. Prove me wrong all season long. That's absolutely fine with me.
But yes, I suppose finally, do you want to give your podcast a little bit of a plug and where people, if they want to find out some more about the Giants, where they can head to?
Yeah, sure. So at the introduction, we're Big Blue UK and Ireland. We're on Twitter at Big Blue UK IRL. You find us on Twitter on there. We're obviously trying to get more active. We're brand new. We've literally been going since March. And that's how long I've known Kevin Dan, who are on the podcast with me. So I've not known them very long at all. Brand new to all this. We felt there was a little bit of a market. There's no Giants UK podcast, so we thought we'd get on it. And we're also affiliated with the UK Giants on Twitter and Facebook as well. That's where we all met, and that's where we arrange meetups, etc.
Right, brilliant. Shane, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast this week, and good luck for the weekend, but hopefully you don't enjoy it too much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great chatting, and look forward to the game on Sunday. I'm sure we're both just happy to see some real football starting.
So thanks to Shane for coming on the show this week. Stuart, week 1, the Broncos travelling to New York to take on Pat Shermer's former team in the Giants. I mean, it's imperative that the Broncos get off to a good start with the way the schedule's fallen. How do you see this one going?
Well, like we spoke about last week, if we can win the first 3 games going into the first, what arguably would be the trickiest game, all the confidence will be with us. If we lose those first couple of games, or we go into the Ravens game 1 and 2, something like that, it's all going to be pickety. It's going to be horrible to watch. You're going to be on your edge, tin tucks, constantly watching the rest of the season. I think we go to MetLife there. They've got Evan Ingram is injured at the moment, struggling to practice. So that's their main tight end target that's struggling. You've obviously got Saquon Barkley, who's an absolute outstanding talent, but coming back from injury, he might not be 100%. Like I mentioned before, if we can stifle him for the first half, maybe if we can get a couple of touchdowns ahead, they might just save him for the rest of the season and put somebody else in. So that's another threat eliminated. Daniel Jones hasn't really set the world on fire since being drafted by the Giants, so he's a target that we can definitely upset and ruffle his feathers in the pocket, hopefully with the good pass rush we've got. And to be honest with you, their corners aren't on the same level as our receivers. If Teddy can get some nice pockets and be able to release the ball early enough and let the lads run, get the yards after catch up what we're expecting, I can see it being a comfortable afternoon. Yeah, and probably definitely a nice win to start the season off.
Possibly the toughest test the Broncos will face is the interior of the offensive line, which is probably the weaker part of the offensive line, and that's, they'll be going up against some of the Giants' stronger players. You've got Leonard Williams, who got a big payday in the off-season. He's on that interior. So that could be a key battleground for the Broncos, couldn't it? Protecting Teddy. Need a good start from Reisner, Lloyd Cushenberry, and Graham Glasgow.
But also, that's where you've got the mobility of Teddy to just move the pocket out of their way. If you can slide the pocket, and he's got nice, easy. What we said about Melvin Gordon before with how good he is with his hands. If you can just slide the pocket and just dump it off to Melvin Gordon, get the guys out in front. So Cortland Sutton's a fantastic blocking wide receiver. You've got the big body then of a Noah Fant or Albert O, definitely. You might have Saubert out there as well, or somebody. Just a couple of plays like that there that just demoralises the pass rush. It's always a key to demoralise the pass rush early on with let them come at you thinking they're going to get you and just dump it off and get a massive first down. I think it's things like that that's going to determine it. It's what I was saying to you before about consistency there. If we can consistently move the chains, keep the time of possession on our side, wear out their pass rush, because they paid a lot of money for that defence a couple of years ago. It's not really worked out for them, but they seem to be paying again to it. If we can just get rid of their internal pressure, like you mentioned quite correctly, as a main key, give the boys a little bit of confidence, but boost up in the middle, and then just run at them for a little bit, keep them moving backwards, keep them moving sideways, tire them out. I don't think the strength and depth is there once those boys get tired. That's the way I would attack them if it was me, but we'll see what Shermer thinks.
Yeah, I mean, having Shermer, Mike Shula, who were both with New York a couple of years ago, in Daniel Jones' rookie season, do you think that can give the Broncos some form of an upper hand going into this one?
I would think so, because I can imagine in every class the offensive coordinators will look at every single quarterback. They'll look at as many running backs as they can, wide receivers, tight ends, etc., etc. So what they'll do is they should, what I would think is generate a file. So Pat Shermer's going to bring his Daniel Jones file to Denver with him, obviously, because it's his file. So if he wanted to draft Daniel Jones, the best quarterback in the draft for his class, then he's going to have a lot of information on him, a lot of strengths, a lot of weaknesses. It's going to allow Vic Fangio to sit there and go, tell me about him. Right, we'll do this then. Practice this. It just means, it's like when you go up against an old team, you know a few tricks of the trade that the other player's going to use, the other people are going to use. You know, just like Daniel Jones is probably going to be able to give a little bit of information to the defense about how Pat Shermer thinks. Oh, if Pat Shermer does this sort of formation, 90% of the time he does this because I've worked with him. So it's going to be counterintuitive as well as a good sign for us. So we'll just have to see. I can't imagine the weapons we've got, any information on formations, etc., that the Giants are aware of. I can't see it being that much of an issue with the weapons we have. Whereas Daniel Jones not being the confident quarterback as he would like to be, has not as good as he would like to be as well. He's struggled his couple of years that he's been in the league. I think that's more of an issue that we, as in Denver, will be able to exploit more than the Giants will be able to exploit from us by knowing Pat Shermer.
Right. Prediction time, Stuart. Give us a score prediction for this game.
I'm going to say 24-7.
Okay, I'll go 21-13 Broncos. Dave, you're not here, but we'll assume you'll have given it as a wrong prediction, as we'll mark that one down.
As we always have.
Yeah.
All of us have always been wrong.
We'll mark it down as wrong, Dave. Well, that just about does us for this week's episode of the podcast. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, as always. Thanks to Zach and Shane for coming on this week. We wish Dave all the best, and hopefully he's back and fully recovered next week. Thanks to you, Stuart, and we'll see you all next week when hopefully the Broncos have picked up a first win of the season.
Go Broncos.